Hey friends, it's Gloria and welcome back to another video. I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of May. Hopefully this won't be a long one because I don't have actually that many to talk about. Mostly are historical, and then I have some more fan fictions that I was reading. Get into those in a second. I read a book from one of my favorite authors, Amy Harmon. She's on my list of an author that I want to read the entirety of her backlist, all of her books. But actually I don't think I want to do that because at this point I feel like I know my reading taste enough where I don't think certain books of hers from the past are going to be my kind of books, and I don't want to give a bunch of low ratings to a bunch of books that I already know that I wouldn't like. But I did pick up one of her last historical fictions that I have left. I think I have one more after this one, from Sand and Ash. This is her World War II set in Italy historical fiction. This one was published in 2016. I liked it pretty good. Like, it was a solid read, but it wasn't a favorite, outstanding, new, amazing historical fiction. I think I had some trouble reconciling some choices that the characters made in this book. We follow two people that live in Italy as things are changing in the country, as Germany has invaded and all of these laws against the Jews are coming out. Primarily there's a Jewish family. We have a Jewish girl and then a Catholic man, and they have known each other since they were kids. They grew up together. They've had crushes on one another. And there are flashbacks to their earlier times together, but primarily it's when they are adults as the war is happening. He is an ordained Catholic priest, and she goes into hiding. He hides her, and he's part of the resistance movement that the Catholic Church put up in Italy to hide a lot of Jews. So he's involved in that. She gets involved as well. And true to Amy Harmon's fashion, I mean, with some of her historical fiction, some stuff goes down. There's tragedy and horrific things that happen, and often death of some side characters or even main characters. And it was a really sad read, and I feel like I have not read World War II historical fiction in Italy. I own a couple on my shelves that I've been meaning to read. So that was nice to have that part kind of exposed, like another, you know, look behind the curtain of what was going down in that part of Europe as the Germans invaded. So overall, I liked it. I learned a lot. I feel like she pulls from a lot of like historical sources to try to make it as historically accurate as possible, with it being a fictionalized story as well. My main issue with this is the romance was I don't know enough about Catholicism, but he is an ordained Catholic priest and he loves her from the beginning, and he knows that he loves her, but he kind of runs away from that love and joins the Catholic Church because he thinks that's what he's called to do. And it did turn out that he helped a lot of Jews with that decision, but he ends up giving up his priestly duties or whatever because he loves her too much, and they need to be together, specifically sexually. Like, they just love each other so much that they need to be together, and so he gives up like the things that you have to do to be a priest. And I kind of didn't fully like agree with that. I don't know, you made your certain choices, and I felt like it was for the drama of it all, but like, would it actually happen? I don't know. I had some conflicting thoughts about the actual romance and why they ended up together, but that was really what was drawing me through the story too. If that wasn't there, I feel like I wouldn't have like cared enough about these two people and all the times that they would come to reunite throughout the story. I also felt like this lacked in terms of the length as well. That was another issue. The ending specifically, like we jump in time and I want to know the details. This kind of reminded me in some aspects to The Bronze Horseman, a series that I read earlier. This like epic sweeping romantic saga through the war, and there was really the most interesting part of the story to me was skipped over because we have a time jump. Ultimately, these two people that come together and fall in love and want to be together get separated, and you're left like, how are they gonna find each other again? This seems impossible. But then we have time jump and then they're reunited, and we're like, well, I want to know that time jump. I want to know that year-long gap of the things that were happening to you. So I felt like this book could have been like another 200 plus pages longer, if not like a bigger continuation of the story, because I needed a little bit more. If I'm gonna care about this romance, I need to know more about it, and I need to have more of it. So those were just some of the things that I were nitpicking, but overall, an interesting, good historical fiction read. Not my favorite Amy Harmon, but I'm glad I got another one of hers read. Then I picked up another favorite author. I shouldn't say that she's a favorite author now though, because I've only given one 5 stars, and all the other ones I've had some things with. This one is no exception. I also had some things with. A Fall of Marigolds by Susan Meisner. This is a dual timeline story that fell to the prey of I hated one timeline and wish I was just in the other one. The funny thing is though, I wanted to be in the current timeline. The current timeline has to do with a woman. During 9/11, she experiences a horrible, tragic loss. Her husband dies, and we go through the nitty-gritty details of the events of that morning of how it happened. I was so invested, like it made me choke up and cry. It reminded me of a lot of the 9/11 nonfiction books that I have read. Like, it was so well done, and I wanted more of that. and every single time I jumped back to the story time, it went back to a character that I absolutely annoyed the crap out of me. She was one of the worst characters I've read in historical fiction because she was just so annoying to me. I'm like, girl, get your life together. My goodness. We go back to 1911 and we have a young girl that experienced the Triangle Waste Factory fire, which was an event in New York City where a bunch of people were trapped in a building and there was a big fire and they had to jump out of the buildings to not burn to death, and a bunch of people died. You can compare the two events like 9/11, even though it was a terrorist event, but people being trapped inside a building, not being able to get out because of a fire. I feel like that was the tie. And then the way these two characters are connected by a piece of fabric was very not, like, it didn't connect. It was like one random letter at the end, and this is like, this person passed along this to this to this. Oh, and then that's how you're connected. And I'm like, oh, come on. So it really felt like completely two separate storylines. Yeah, the girl in the historical timeline annoyed me. She was awful to all of the men that were nice to her and cared about her. She was awful to her friends. She was awful to her family. She was super annoying and just like was grieving this horrible loss of this guy that she had a crush on that died in the fire and just couldn't handle anything in her life. So I gave this book 3 stars, but there were parts of it that felt like 4 stars, that felt really good. Then there were parts that felt like a 1 or 2 star read because I was hate reading it. That was my conflicting feelings of this book. Again, I just wanted like a separate 9/11 book. I feel like that would have been great, and I wish that's what this was. Then I read a very, very popular historical fiction, and I'm so glad I did because this was so enjoyable. The Help by Catherine Stockett. I completely understand the hype. I understand why the movie was made. I watched the movie several years back when it came out and I loved it, and this was a fantastic read. It wasn't 5 stars. I think because so much time has passed. I imagine that maybe if I read this when it first came out and it was like the kind of the first of its kind, I maybe would have been like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I also already know the story because the movie, this is more than a movie, which I liked. We get more in depth with each of the characters. We mainly follow a young woman in the 60s in Jackson, Mississippi, who's part of like a friend group of these wealthy, privileged white women who all have black maids that work for them called The Help. This main woman, she wants to be a writer, and so she decides to interview some of the help secretly to write a book about their experience, what it's like to work for these white women, all of the different things and roller coaster of emotions that you feel working for someone in a very racist and segregated world in the South. It was written so well. We got 3 main perspectives, 2 of the maids and then this white woman, Skeeter. And then we also follow Minnie and Aibileen. There were beautiful moments and super sad moments. I thought we got a really fantastic glimpse of what it could be like to live in the 1960s in Mississippi in the segregated South, and super well done. I feel like everyone's read this book, but for some reason, if you haven't and you're sleeping on it, it's worth your time. I think it's written really well. I'm really surprised. This was Catherine Stockett's debut and the only novel that she's written, and it was published in 2009. So I feel like it's about time, Catherine Stockett, for you to release another book, because this one was excellent. Then I picked up another Regency romance because this one was recommended on some random website that if you liked Edenbrook, which I loved and raved about last month, super wholesome, sweet, wonderful Regency romance that was the most romantic thing I've read in a long time. And then this one was recommended and I hate read this book. I gave it 1 star. This was atrocious. To Have and to Hoax by Martha Waters. No, this was a no for me. This entire book is miscommunication. So if that's your thing and you love reading about that and you love reading about people having completely stupid fights for absolutely no reason because they just cannot talk to each other, then this is the book for you. But that is one of my biggest pet peeves, and I was reading this oftentimes with my jaw open being like, is this for real? This isn't a joke. And then I looked and so many people that I follow like this book, and I just don't understand. I don't understand, you guys. This was so bad. We have 2 people that have an instant love connection on a balcony, and in order to save her, you know, virtue, they get married right away because they walk off the balcony together and are discovered. And this is, you know, set in the Regency times or whatever, so that's improper. So they get married and they have the best first year of marriage, completely in love, just bliss. And then they have this huge argument, and that we learned in the beginning. There's this huge falling out, this huge argument, and they haven't talked to each other in 4 years, and they're both miserable. And they have these 2 separate friend groups that are all kind of, they all talk to each other, hang out, but we have the girls and we have the guys, and everyone's like, well, why did you guys have a falling out? And oh, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. And then we learned what the argument was, which was literally just miscommunication. Like, you just couldn't have a proper conversation together. You overheard something and then you came to a conclusion. And then the entirety of the book is them playing games and fighting with each other and making up stories to try to get each other to like be jealous. It was just super immature, super annoying. I was frustrated. It was repetitive. Nothing about this book was good. The most annoying characters, the most annoying communication, awful dialogue. It was all bad. It was all bad, and I don't understand why anyone would like this. This was bad, really bad. I hated it. Absolutely would not recommend. And then to close it out, another 1, 2, 3, 4 books. Why am I still reading this? I don't know. I'm completely just sucked in and I'm in a deep hole. But I've read 4 more Harry Potter fan fictions, specifically Draco and Hermione coming together. And out of all these 4 that I read in the month of May, I would not recommend any of them because I don't think that they're that good. They're nowhere compared to some of the good ones that I read earlier, where I really only read one amazing one, and that was The Disappearances of Draco Malfoy. But I read Remain Nameless, The Right Thing to Do, All the Wrong Things, and The Auction. All are very adult, very sexually explicit, too much. Just too much, would not recommend. And then specifically Right Thing to Do and All the Wrong Things and The Auction are kind of in this series world, and they are all poorly written. There's some interesting things about them, but they weren't written well and they weren't fleshed out enough, and it's written for a very specific audience looking for very specific sexually explicit content. Just wasn't my jam. So why did I read them? Why did I not stop? Why did I keep reading them? That's another question. That is another question that I need to figure out. Why do I keep reading them? Why do I have like 5 more Draco and Hermione fan fictions on my Kindle right now that I will probably read in the month of June? I have a problem, and I'm here to admit it, but yeah, I wouldn't recommend any of these. So all I have to say, out of everything I read this month, which wasn't that much, I would recommend The Help, and I would recommend this kind of, if you're really craving a World War II Italian romantic story about people that maybe shouldn't be together, come together anyways, against all odds. These 2. Everything else I wouldn't. That was my month. Not a great one, not a great one. I'm stoked for June though. I think June is going to be full of fantastic things. Thank you all for voting in my previous video about my June TBR. So many people are voting, which is super fun. I'm keeping a tally of everything, and so I'm going to read some fun historical fiction for June for the historical fiction readathon that I'm co-hosting. That's gonna be great. I also have a bunch of other stuff like lined up waiting for me in Libby. I'm overwhelmed with everything that is in my Libby right now, but I'm really excited about it. So I think June's gonna be great, and we're just gonna forget May ever happened, you know? That's the way it is. But thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in some more book videos soon. Bye.